Hello and welcome to me overanalyzing every single chapter in Houseki no Kuni to see Antark again. Spoilers for up to 105. Leave any comments for any observations you make that I don't, anything that you analyze that I don't. If you disagree with me, leave that in the comments. If you uh, have a completely different view of something that I have, then please let me know in the comments because I want to hear your takes on this series as well because we have to crack it. We have to understand what this means. This is like decoding something, man. Anyway, here, if you. So, what happened last time is Antark is doing a brilliant job at fighting people, and nothing bad has happened, and they are completely in one piece. Anyway, so here we go. So, like I guess this is showing like all their pieces like scattered, and then they're okay. Like they come out of the snow. Um, mission accomplished, more or less. I drove off the new model. That will earn me some of Sensei's praise. This also shows the like the main reason for Antark doing a lot of this stuff is because they care deeply for Sensei and want like uh they want recognition from him. That's why they say praise. Oh wait, I forgot. Uh, I fought it without permission, so I might be punished instead. What do I do? Um, and then Foss is like, I'm over here. But like Antark is like what am I saying? Like you can see that Antark is a clear like care for Sensei. Um and it kind of is like how Foss says like before is like the reason they fight is for like Congo. And it's interesting that that's very clear. Like I guess that's a contrast to Foss later is just that um younger Foss, said that that was like the reason they fight is they fight to protect Congo, even though he doesn't need protection, something like that, or just because And it's kind of like how fighting is like the greatest act of care that Foss thinks to uh, do for Congo. Um, and it's interesting how that just gets twisted later, but it's also interesting how like Antark is kind of like because all the characters are kind of a parallel and foil to Foss. Like Antark is kind of like a foil to Foss later for how much they care for Congo, which is why it like is devastating. I do want to get that here. Let me get to 12 real quick. Um, this is a just jumping ahead a little bit, just a tiny bit, but like, oh yeah, cool. I flipped right to it. But like when Antark comes back, useless destroyed. Um, like they ask where Foss is, because yeah, that's lovely. I asked Foss to take care of you. Fosswood decided I was useless and destroyed me. For that, I am grateful. Useless, destroyed. Anyway, so that's kind of traumatizing. But anyway, back to the other trauma. Um, like it's just so interesting how both their past evolves and how is that in this chapter? Um, how like Antark's like last where is it? Where are you? Okay, we're going ahead a bit. Um, but like yeah. Wait, where is it? Is it here? Okay, yeah. So here. Okay, it is just a couple pages in, but like how make sure like Congo isn't lonely this winter. Um, I also thought that yeah, this winter is up to you now, like giving that to Foss. But like it's just so interesting how through the series Foss just completely missed that. But anyway, here I'll get to that when we get there. We're a little still there. Hey, whoa, you have changed. No, I'm inside. I can't tell. It's also how like change is such a like Foss changes a lot. The cube is a cube. I can't tell if your conclusions love this material or hate it. Get me out of here. I can't move. With the thing with the conclusions loving or hating it, I think that this is just again, Foss's mind is reflected in them physically. Right now, they are scared. They don't know what to do. They feel uneasy. And they saw the Lunarians, so I feel like this is like a defense mechanism for them. Um, hey, not so rough, try and get more gentle. This is the same thing that happened with their legs. It's just presented in a different way. Like with what happened with the amethyst. Like they're scared, they don't know what to do, they don't want to move, all that stuff. And hey, not so rough, be more gentle. You'll just have to deal with it. I'm barely holding myself together here. Okay, but the important thing is that you're, like, Foss just wants them to be okay too, and safe, completely safe. Completely safe, Foss. Everything's fine. And then this is just like Foss just being able to just see out of the small things of what is happening to Antarctica. And they, like, I guess they hear the sound first and then they turn. And the thing is that, like, once Antark tells them to shut up, um, again, mind is reflected in them physically. Foss's gold alloy just starts shutting them up because they're scared. Like, their fear is more powerful than wanting to help Antark. Make sure Sensei isn't lonely this winter. Um, it's up to you now. Uh, and so then the Lunarians are coming down to take Antark, and it's just such a stark contrast between Foss in the cube in the darkness, and then Antark just laying on the snow in the sunlight. And I love the, like, juxtaposition of it, and you can just see that they emphasize the eyes here of just the panic in Foss's face. And this is the same thing that happened with their legs. Remember why? New hands. Why won't you move? This is the exact same thing as Foss says with their legs, like in the previous volume, where it's like, why weren't my legs moving? Why weren't they doing it? It's because they're afraid. It's because Foss is so scared that Foss doesn't want to do anything. If you're my hands, then fight. Like, this is Foss trying to take ownership over their hands, and this is Foss trying to have more courage, like Antark said. Like, they now want to have a better image of themselves where they're not scared and they want to do it. Please, you're mine, aren't you? So it's interesting that Foss like this at this point. The goal is already attached to Foss. I think this is like demonstrating to Foss like their mental state. Same with the legs. It's the same thing that happened with the legs. It's gonna be interesting when we get to the Lapis' head, but like, Foss saying "you're mine, aren't you" is kind of like shifting Foss's image too, because this is what Foss is at right now. Foss is scared. Foss doesn't want to do anything. This is what Foss has been doing for the entire series. This shows a shift where they're like you're mine, then become stronger, because that's what Foss wants to do. Just do it, you stupid Dross. Like, it also shows that, like, this is how Foss, like, views themselves, and how, like, Foss, like, talks to it. They're just like, please, just do it. Just finally do something, like, kind of telling their mind, like, again, mind reflected in body, to, like, actually do it is what they want to do instead of just sitting still. Because that happens a lot where we're like, oh, I'd love to do this, I'd love to do that, but our fear or something else, like, gets in the way, and that's what Foss is really, like, yelling at. But it says, it's like here, Foss yelling at their arms, but Foss sees it more as yelling at themselves, because now they've put those arms as a part of them. And they probably see their arms and their legs as more as them than their physical self, like I pointed out in the previous ones. And so, then, like, Foss goes all Lotus thing. I don't, again, Buddhism, all the Buddhist stuff I am not as well versed as. So if you know more about, like, the meaning of the lotus and all that stuff, then please in the comments, because I honestly don't know that much about it. But this is the lotus that comes up a lot, and then Foss is like, oh, it's too heavy, I can't stand up. And then yeah, we have Foss finally doing something, and we see how the gold is just cracking them. The gold is literally breaking them to be combined with them, and it's just like so sad. Like, it's the fact that, like, I say like a lot. I'm sorry. I talk like a. I hope I don't do that often. But anyway, so you see that the gold is, like, being incorporated in with them and filling in the cracks. Like, that's the thing, and that's like the like the gold technique that, like, I'm not sure if it's specifically a Japanese thing. When you repair something with gold, I think it is. But that's, like, what it's for. But the gold isn't repairing Foss. The gold is breaking Foss down in order to become more a part of Foss, in order for Foss to actually use the arms. And again, this is like Foss saying, like, you're mine, aren't you? To the gold. Like, now Foss is, like, in order for Foss to move, because the gold is so heavy, the gold weighs Foss down so much. And again, their mental state is reflected in them physically. It's everything, their guilt and shame is, like, weighing them down. Now, in order for them to walk, they need to embed it more in, and to actually go out, because they're like, this could just be like a visual representation of Foss being like, okay, because I'm so guilty about this, and because I'm so shameful about this, the fact that they lost their arms and all this stuff, you have to do something right now. Like Foss is like, you have to make it up somehow, and that's why like this happens. And of course, it's to support the heaviness that comes with carrying Foss's burdens. And then they're going to fight the Lunarians, and the Lunarians are already far, and then there's one falling out of the ship, which is kind of funny. Um, Another thing about the gold alloy is that it's really up to interpretation and personal opinion when you think Foss really like went downhill. But I know so many people think that either they equate Foss looting, they either equate the winter, Foss staying up over the winter, or they equate Foss losing Antark, or they just equate Foss getting the gold alloy as like one of the pivotal moments of Foss like really going deranged or going downhill in the sense. I feel like Foss has just always been going downhill. I also think that I don't know. I feel like Lapis's head was more extreme, but I know a lot of people view it this way, and I can definitely see it just with the gold ally changing so many things. But it's interesting because people say like, "Oh, it's the loss of Antark, it's the winter, it's something like that." But all of that culminates in Foss getting the gold alloy, like all the problems with winter, all of the stuff, and all of Foss's trauma just builds and builds and builds on each other. Um, that that's why it's because we're like, oh, it's the winter. Like Foss couldn't stay up in the winter. It's Antark losing Antark. It's also getting the gold. Well, all of those happen at the same time, which is the lovely thing, which is why it's so detrimental. But anyway, so Foss like blocks it. Foss is pretty cool now. And then Forget About Me, the small fry, go after that one. And so this is like Foss talking to themselves now, and they're yelling their thoughts now, because we actually don't get to hear that much of Foss's thoughts, and that's why we have to imply like it is shown visually. Like I've been pointing out, it shows visually the like sadness and like mental strife that Foss goes through like through the story, but we don't get to hear Foss's thoughts. Not often. We get to hear Foss's thoughts sometimes, but very rarely do we actually hear Foss's thoughts. So, like, whenever, like, Foss yelling, like, what they're yelling now, like, it's impactful here because we're like, wow, like, Foss is really, really mad, but we don't know if that's what Foss has been yelling internally for, like, a lot of the series. And, like, what if they were just yelling internally to get their legs to move when with the amethyst and they just couldn't? Now they're just pleading with themselves to please move and get up and do something for Antark because they really don't want to lose Antark. Forget about that small fire and go after that one. So yeah, it's just them yelling at them, and like the way that Foss talks here is really talking down to themselves, like to the extreme. And like I said before, that Foss talks very highly of every single other gem. Um, and that just and I told that says that implies that they talk very like their internal voice probably talks very badly about themselves. Here, that internal voice is getting out, and they speak in this sort of rough, really rough tone with themselves. Um, these are my new powerful hands. I'm not giving up. And see, Foss immediately takes ownership of them. Like Foss is also like that you're gonna be better than me. Like this new material is gonna be better than what I'm created as. And it's really like ironic that like Foss is named after the material they made of, and there's so little of Foss. It's just so good, like storytelling wise. I'm pushing myself harder than ever. Like again, like this is Foss like physically breaking themselves and incorporating a new material, uh, because they can't mess up again. They don't want to, and that's this whole story is them messing up, and them messing up by trying to not mess up again, and it's just a very tragic. Um, I'm being brave too. Like this is Foss having courage. Like what Antark said. Like they're finally starting to like push that fear down and actually do something. So why are they getting further away? So sad. Um, Another thing too is that this could equate to the beginning of the story. Like, remember when Foss? Oh man, I'm just realizing more and more things, and it gets worse. Like the series gets worse and worse the more you read it. But remember when Foss got their legs and they fell off the chair and they looked back at the spot that they were at the beginning of the stories and said that they were further away. it's using the same word here. Why are they getting further away? Why is Foss getting further away from their goal or further away from the beginning? Um they're getting further and further away from their goal the more that they add to themselves. And it's really sad, and it's not until the end where they've basically done a completely 180 where they actually return to the beginning. Because because despite all of this, despite all their physical strife with their mental state, they never fixed their mental problems, and that's the reason. They always wanted something else. They could never be satisfied. And not until the end where they reach more contentness and, stuff like that. But yeah, they're a lovely, lovely story. And then, Foss throws, why am I getting further away? And we just see how far they are disappearing into nothing. And just, like, we don't need any words. We, like, just the expression on Foss's face is enough to know the mental anguish they're going for. And then Congo finally gets there and is there to catch them. Antark was taken in my place. Like, it feels bad, man. But, like, Antark goes away, and Foss sees it as, like, Antark sacrificed themselves for Foss, and which is something that Foss has been wanting to do for other people, and it's, again, like, losing Antark just added to the burden and the guilt and the sadness that Foss feels, because they just want to be useful to someone, and then they wound up getting someone taken to the moon. They wanted to prevent Cinnabar from going to the moon, and then they wound up getting Antark to the moon. It's just absolutely bad feeling. Absolute trauma. That's all we ask for. And that's why it hits so hard. Like, because I watched the anime first, and, like, I remember Antark's, like, death, in quotes, being very distressing, not only because they were the voice actor by Killua, and I really liked them for that one fact, but, like, also just because, like, all these things are at play subconsciously that makes it so much worse. Because, like, again, none of this stuff is, like, explicitly said, like, how Foss feels or how much worse this makes Foss feels. It's all done with facial expressions and paneling and artwork. That's why this is such a comic medium. But all of that just makes this scene just absolutely abysmally worse. And then Foss goes like, "I know, it was my fault." Oh, it's so bad. And then the sword, is just stuck there because with their failure. Like, it also just shows their failure with it being their fault and stuff. And then, we'll go over the next one next time. But I mean we'll eventually get to 12, right? Like, we're in 3 right now, but let me just, for the emotional damage, let us look at this scene. So here we have, like, in 3. Also, I love the difference between the Earth and the Moon. You can really tell when you put them next to each other. But so, like, again, you can really tell. It's so good, like how the art style just changes for the different locations. Anyway, where is our Antark's last words? That's all I'm looking for. So, it's right here. So here is Antark's last words. Like, Antark is like, make sure Sensei isn't lonely. This winter is up to you now. It's also interesting because Foss never goes on winter duty after this, because Cairngorm takes over. So that's also interesting that, I don't know, do you think Foss forgot these words? I guess that's something, like, I'd ask you to interpret. Do you think Foss forgot what Antark told him? Because, like, Antark becomes such a, like, pivotal trauma moment for Foss, like, later on. But, like, Foss doesn't follow this. Make sure Sensei isn't lonely. Foss later actively seeks to make Congo lonely so that he'd pray. And so that he wouldn't have any more attachments to the gems anymore. Like, it's the complete opposite of what Antark asked Foss to do. And then, this winter is up to you. And then, like, I guess Foss takes over this winter. Like, I wonder if, well, I know in the anime, like, Antark just says Fuyo, like, I forgot Japanese. Fuyo, like, Tanamu, which is like, please take care of winter, like, sort of thing. So it's kind of like winter in general. This is this winter, like, implying that it's only this one. But I'm pretty sure, like, Antark was meaning, like, take care of winter in general, like, because the nice thing about this is that Antark was able to imbue their knowledge of taking over winter duty to Foss before they left. So Foss is supposed to, like, help with that, But do Do you think Foss forgot about this? Like, genuinely, like, it's so upsetting to me because Antark was so important to Foss, and yet Foss couldn't honor Antark's final words. It's awful to think about. Just the sheer, like, emotional damage. Like, when no one was happy when Antark came back, right? Because I was just too emotionally distraught to be like, oh, cool, Antark's back. Do I have the emotional capacity for this? The answer is absolutely not. Um, so yeah, so Antark returns like in volume 12. We'll get to here eventually, but I'm just pulling it out to like reference. Where's Phosphofolite? Sensei, what happened to Phosphofolite? I asked Phosphofolite to take care of you. Phosphofolite decided I was useless. I already read this, but useless and destroyed me. For that I am grateful. Useless, destroyed. Technically, if it hadn't been for you, and you can fall apart, were the exact words. Absolutely. Like, Antark's face says it all, and I don't think Antark gets any more reactions to that. Yeah, uh like we just have this reaction as like Antark is just listening to them talk about it, and Antark must be so confused because that's the last thing Antark saw. Like, so we just read that. That's the last thing Antark saw, and then imagine waking up and hearing this. Oh, it's so abysmal, so sad. Why? Anyway, um, yeah, emotional damage. And it's kind of interesting, like, because we only ever saw Antark with Foss and Congo. Like, we only ever saw Antark and Congo with Foss, and so it's kind of like interesting to see them reunite, and Foss is not there. It's so good. And then Antark is only seen like here. Also, again, this isn't related to the chapter. I just want to talk about it. But this is the only chapter we see like Foss's like friends that they kind of made in this series like interact. So it's interesting like seeing Antark, Karen Gorm, and Wedegot, that's their name now. Interact and Cinnabar interact like the three of them together. And it's kind of nice how they're friends now, and especially because all of these three characters, were their whole thing was loneliness too. Like Antark, it's the loneliness of winter. Cinnabar's self-explanatory. There's the loneliness of them like getting off. Cairngorm's a little less, but you can tell that they were more secluded. And of course, after Ghost was gone, like Cairngorm like was so used to having someone else that it was like different. Cairngorm's a little special case. But like it's interesting how like Foss's aim was to help these characters. Foss wanted to help Cinnabar. That was the first thing they wanted to do. They wanted to help Antark. They wanted to get Antark back from the moon. They wanted to prevent Cinnabar from going to the moon. They wanted to get Antark away from the moon. Cairngorm is again just a weird case, but Cairngorm. What was Cairngorm's things? Cairngorm was like lapis trauma? Getting off. I don't know. Cairngorm is just a weird case. I don't know. We'll get to Cairngorm when we get there. Cairngorm is another Cairngorm we'll worry about later. But I just find it interesting that like Foss wanted Cinnabar to not go to the moon. Foss wanted wanted to bring Antark back from the moon, and the other motivation for Cairngorm is a little weird. But for Cairngorm, I guess it was like Foss was just so much different after that. Cairngorm's weird. We'll get to Cairngorm when we get to Cairngorm. I'm sure like there's another thing. Everything fell apart so much that it kind of blends together with how much of a train wreck every relationship that Foss has like devolves. But please let me know your ideas in the comments below, and your analyses of everything. And we'll finish off with the last chapter of 3 in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!